Hello, this is 2 Minutes About Time with Luke Allen and Robert E.G. Black, the podcast that takes a look at the film About Time 2 minutes at a time. I am Richard Curtis, and I hope you enjoy it. And if you don't, well, you can just travel back in time 2 minutes and listen to something else.
I'm one of your hosts, Luke Allen. I'm joined, as always, with my co-host, Robert E.G. Black.
Hello, hello.
And for this special episode, with special guests, John Paul Kelly and Liz Griffiths.
Hello,
Hi.
Good evening.
So this is the first time we've had two guests on for one episode, so this could be strange or fun or who knows. Anything could happen. So to those who might not know who you are both of you able to briefly introduce yourselves and what your role is within About Time?
Sure. Liz, shall I go first?
Of course, you go first, JP.
I'm JP, and I was the production designer on About Time. And had a team of wonderful people that I worked alongside. And Liz Griffiths, who's here as well, was the set decorator.
Yes, hello. Yeah, so I was set decorator, so worked with JP and, as you said, a great team of people. And we travelled to Cornwall and then back in time to the studio in London.
Yes, I mean, I think one of the great things about doing a show like this that goes so in-depth is we get to give some appreciation to some of these roles, which we've been complimenting the set design and the production design throughout the whole show. So it's nice to be able to do this. I mean, Robert, I'm sure you've got plenty of comments to go a lot more in depth than I do. Is there any standout questions that we start with?
Well, before we get to questions, I'd say there's some great things we've mentioned, like the father's study. I mean, it's really simple decoration, all the books and everything, but it is so evocative of character and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that was one of our favourite sets.
When you compare it to what the actual room looks like, it's an incredible makeover, isn't it?
That's right. I mean, it was a house called Porthpean House down in Cornwall, and a wonderful character, Mrs. Petherick, owned it, and I got to spend lots of mornings having bread and jam and cups of tea in her secret little kitchen as me and the guys, JP, we all dived in there to get these sets ready. And the study, the father's study, in reality was her dining room. So it had a big formal Georgian table on it and very, minimal in there. And of course, we took that away and added the fun factor and the characterisation and all the personable smalls, the ships, the pictures, the backstory of the father into jazz, the eclectic cushions, the eclectic chairs, the chess set, all of this stuff that, we'd come up with as a kind of reference for his great character,
I think what was always going to be interesting about him was there was going to be layers and layers of character, because he'd so much opportunity to rethink things and try things a second time and work out who his favourite band were and so on. He could kind of just keep spinning the wheel to go back again. So it made him this kind of super layered character. So we kind of tried to reflect that really in his world. But I mean, the house itself, it sounded like you said the room doesn't look like that anymore. Have you seen the house, Luke? Is that?
We've seen pictures of it.
There's pictures on their website.
Yeah. Oh,
you can still rent the house.
It's a very big house, so it wasn't quite right for the character. So we ended up sort of painting it pink and covering it in climbers and creepers and just to try and give it a sort of an eccentric air. But we sort of played down just how large the house was, because it had been a really long, laborious process finding it. We had spent months in Cornwall looking for somewhere, and then we ended up sort of picking places off Google Maps and just trying every single large shape that was by the sea one by one. and and I ended up being the person who knocked on the door and saw the house for the first time. But it's sort of, at the time, for me, it felt like it was probably a little bit too opulent and wealthy, really, for the characters as they were written. But Richard absolutely adored it. I suppose probably a slightly different gauge of what opulent is compared to me. But he thought it was it was perfect. So we kind of adapted the house and sort of made it feel more like the eccentric character that Liz has been talking about with the dad, and what we did with his room.
Yeah.
Am I right that the original script was Scotland instead of Cornwall?
That's right, it was, yeah. And we actually recce'd Scotland a lot before it. The problem, it went into something a little bit sort of gothic with Scottish castles that wasn't feeling right. And I think, Richard quite rightly felt it was really important to develop the characters in a kind of a human, little bit more down to earth way, which is what we tried to do, despite the choice of a very grand house. But it felt the kind of gentleness and softness of Cornwall was right. So we quite quickly honed into Cornwall as the area we were going to look for a house. So we literally dredged it coast to coast, trying to find the right place, because we wanted to shoot on location as well. So it was kind of a tall order, really, as to what we were looking for. We needed to find 8 or 9 interior locations as well as the exteriors and beaches nearby and so on. So the house, actually, the location, which you may have heard already, isn't exactly as it's seen in the film. We did some visual effects to put it right on a beach, even though it was beside the sea. It didn't have a view from the beach of the house. So the beach that we shoot on is actually a different location to the house.
Just on a note to probably around the time this episode comes out, or the episodes that will be out, is Robert, I'm pretty sure you said whoever designed Mary's apartment is either a complete genius or absolutely mental.
Yes.
So, can we talk about Mary's flat?
I'm saying nothing.
Well, it was a funny one, Mary's, because we wanted to get her character across, but she needed to live somewhere fairly ordinary. So we kind of dreamt up this idea that somehow there was a hexagonal shaped bedroom at the back of a flat above a shop in Notting Hill. So it was kind of fun, that set, but it was a stretch of the imagination, really, that she'd landed that flat. And we obviously built it in the studio, but and built it above an empty shop. And I've 2 friends with a wonderful thrift shop in Brick Lane. We named the shop after them.
Hunky Dory.
Hunky Dory.
Yeah, which was next door, wasn't it, to that entrance? And then we had to kind of tie in the entrance with a bike hanging, and we had that in the studio. And then you walk into the studio set, and then you've got her love of travel and, the beautiful hand things she's found in the market. And, so we did quite a bit of drapery, like Susie Medcoff made that lovely drape that you swing past to go into the bedroom.
Beautiful, that.
And we eBayed a lot of things like that quilt. So we made it, everything had a life, and it felt very tactile. And, the idea was it felt real and a bit put together. Like the kitchen, I remember we went and got some cupboards from somewhere, or some doors. I think we might have hired the doors, and JP's guys kind of made this fantastic kind of eclectic kitchen that kind of worked for her, and one of those pallet beds I think we made up, and made some cushions to go on it. And
that's right. Yeah, made a sofa out of pallets, I think, didn't we?
Yeah.
It was. I think the kind of aim really was. Yeah. I think the aim really was that you had to feel like Mary was going to fit into this eccentric Cornish family from the moment you sort of met her and saw the flat. So we kind of pushed, I suppose, really the reality of what her character would have been like, to feel like she was a perfect match, really, which is the case. It was kind of love at first sight.
I wish we were on video right now, because I was grinning really big as you were describing that, because her apartment grabbed my attention with everything. All the hanging things don't match.
Yeah.
And somehow she has both a dining room table and a coffee table in the same location in different scenes.
Yeah.
It was cozy.
And there's a cabinet that is just collection of black and white over and over. In one shot, you can finally see it clearly. It's apparently a city rooftop scene. Yeah. But at first glance, it's just this chaos behind her father and mother. And I don't even know what is going on in this room.
Yeah, it reflected their relationship. That's right.
Yeah. It doesn't match so much that it starts to match. It's quite strange. I guess one of the next things we've got to talk about is just the whole the whole colour scheme and the idea that everyone, the characters... Weirdly, it's never commented on in like anything that I've read or heard commentary-wise, but the fact that so often the characters, obviously things with costume, but what they're wearing matches so well to the background they're in to sort of suggest their comfort. So is that like a deliberate decision, I assume, or are we going...
Very much so, yeah. I'm trying very much so, yeah.
Definitely
Yeah, I mean, we spend a lot of time, on every job with the costume designer, So how I tend to work is I put the entire film up on the wall around the art department. So scene by scene, how each set is introduced and how the colours are introduced, and then as everybody adds to that, Liz starts to find the dressing and the decor that's going to be in there, and colours start to emerge. So a colour scheme starts to kind of appear, and then as the costume designer starts to do fittings, what we tend to do is kind of try the different costumes on the wall alongside all our ideas for what the sets would be. And I mean, sometimes it's a compromise from either side. Sometimes we end up sort of compromising the colours. Sometimes the costume designer compromises them. But yeah, it's definitely something that's always really considered. I mean, for my money, I always like costumes to fit into a world rather than to stand against it. So I really like colour on colour. I think that works. Or pattern of one colour in a costume against a plain colour in the background of the same colour. And I think I think it helps to really bed characters into their world, which is, in the case of About Time, was really important. It needed to feel like every environment you in was somewhere absolutely loved to within an inch of itself. And whether it was Tim's room or the dad's study or Mary's apartment, and later their house that they had together, where we went for this kind of quite childlike colours as they had their children. We it was the same ideas and same discussions happened with the costume designer as well, to make sure that it is.
Yeah, JP had this brilliant lookbook. I remember your lookbook, JP, with all your thousands of pictures, and you had lots of reference from Irish country houses. I seem to remember, and at that time people were getting married, and it was like multicoloured costumes for all the grooms, and suddenly everyone had umbrellas that were pink, blue, green, orange, and blue, and it was just that, I remember focusing a lot on the wedding and had that Cornwall feel and sort of that handmade, everything had a real life to it. So I think that was really important, and we kind of brought all that into all the different characters, really.
We did, yeah. The wedding was a big job, wasn't it? That was that was tough to. I mean, that kind of ended up being almost the first conversation I had when I met Richard to talk about doing the job. Really was the wedding, and obviously one of the kind of quintessential things from any Richard Curtis film is a wedding. So he was obsessed with how the wedding would look and how we could give it he'd written it obviously in this way of it being a disaster, a washout wedding. And but he wanted the design to reflect a kind of an unusual wedding as well. So we kind of went for this sort of crazy cushion cupcake wedding kind of idea of lots of internet references we found of people who had kind of unconventional weddings, and that was kind of the beginning really of what Mary was going to be like. Once we'd worked out the sort of person that would have that kind of wedding, that was really the pointer as to how her world should look, and again, the costumes, would lead from that as well. Obviously, with the input, exactly, yeah. So it was almost like a big
top circus, wasn't it? You did the stripy big tent, and it was really important that it flew away on the amount at the exact right time, and that was all became a palaver. But it was amazing inside to do.
I think it's lovely and perfect, obviously, as you said, Robert, with the red dress, that it almost instantly in that means that you don't get it mixed up in your head with other wedding scenes from films. Like, just in that one thing of she's wearing the red dress, when you talk about the About Time wedding scene, that you're not getting it mixed up with any other wedding scene.
No, yeah.
Any other rom-com.
Well, he's certainly done enough weddings in his time. So yeah. It was sort of really crucial. I mean, I think hence why Richard wrote it as this kind of stormy wedding, the idea of actually the perfect relationship having a disaster of a wedding day. versus all the other weddings he's done, where these glorious flowered weddings end up having disastrous relationships. So it was very deliberate, I think, that it felt.
We stuck away from flowers, didn't we? I remember going in when Rachel was having her fitting, and we had a load of roses, and I ended up making that bouquet that she had. I think. Yeah. I mean, it was really random. I was like, I'll make it. So, and it was just made it really simple and, really nice. Well, but flowers was something we didn't want to do particularly.
We got a florist, if I remember, to give us something which arrived, and it wasn't right. So you ended up doing something that felt much more handpicked from the garden.
Yeah.
But the wedding, we'd also talked for a long time. It wasn't an obvious choice to do it for real, the tent flying, but it was something that the marquee, at least, it was something that Richard was really keen on. So we had months of tests to build a fake marquee that could be lifted by a huge crane over people's head and not kill them. So it took a kind of a massive amount of preparation, but we also had to be able to repeat it. So we had to be able to do it lots of times. As it turned out, we used the first take because it was the best, but we shot it 3 or 4 times with this enormous marquee being lifted over 60 people with huge rain rigs and tipping buckets for water and so on. It was a really complicated but really enjoyable scene to shoot. We rarely nowadays get to shoot things as live as that. So things are done in very small, bite-sized sections, and there's usually a lot of visual effects involved with special effects. So it was kind of, I think, probably the last time I've done a big, grand on-camera special effects scene like that. It was good to do.
It was great, and at the same time we were doing it in situ, and we were trying to protect Mrs. Petherick's lawn. I seem to remember because there was so much water coming. And we got the greens guys to kind of put extra duckboard down and kind of get the water to the side, and it was all a thing. And Mrs. Petherick loved her garden. I mean, that garden was her baby.
It was immaculate,
It was immaculate, So we really had to be very careful of all the planting and all the greenery that we added and changed, and taking all the vines down before we painted it pink, and then putting it all back up again, and so she was, but she was pretty cool about the whole thing, actually. I mean, the whole film crew.
She was so chilled. She was incredible. I mean, we completely ransacked her house. We redecorated every single room, and I painted every wall a different colour, every door a different colour to the wall, every piece of skirting, every ceiling, and that poor woman, I don't know how she put up with us, but we really turned the place over.
We certainly did.
But we put it back after. We all left on good terms at the end of quite a long summer.
And we used some of her husband's, who had passed away sadly, some of his wonderful watercolours. So all those rook pictures are on the staircase when Tim first comes down. That is all the house owner's husband's pictures. So she was so delighted that we put all those up.
And they were beautiful. They were so in keeping with the characters as well. Yeah.
Robert, I realise I've been dictating on a lot of the questions. Have you got anything you've been meaning to ask?
This might be hard to remember, but I'm wondering about the Tim and Mary's house. Had a thing by the stairs with these little stones
I knew you were
sticking out.
This.
That always bugged me because they have little kids. That seems dangerous. It's like the corner of the wall has this just row of rocks on it or something.
If I have a minute, I can find
a picture of it.
the file on
Liz,
Dropbox.
I think we had a kind of a hanging thing, some sort of a
driftwoody thing. Was it a driftwoody
thing? Something like. I think it was. Yeah, it was kind of a nod to Cornwall, really. Yeah. That it was maybe something that they brought back. I think I kind of remember hanging like a mobile sort of a. We had some of our ideas there worked better than others. We had this sort of idea for different coloured post-it notes on the wall as her kind of decoration. Which what we hadn't kind of worked out at the time was how short a period we would be in that time frame before we moved to them having had their first child. So what I'd kind of imagined is that you'd see this piece of art and you kind of go, oh, look, it's a wall full of different colours. But then gradually over scenes, you would go, oh, hang on a minute, are they just like
Right.
Post-its that she's somehow laboriously painted into rainbow colours? But you only ever see it once. You only ever see it, I think, at the birthday party. So
I
it doesn't
loved
quite
it.
make sense.
It was the
It's
chaos
kind
of
of
Mary's
this,
apartment in their
slightly
house.
odd thing.
All those colours.
I have to say, I think I nicked that idea, JP, because I used it when we did Pride. There's one of the front living room. I put all post-it notes, but also loads of Polaroids, and put them all on the wall like this eclectic thing, and it worked really well. So that, and I know that's probably one of JP's ideas. Originally.
I only watched Pride the other day. I think I remember that actually.
Yeah, it's great fun. It's good fun. So.
It's a lovely film, Pride.
So I guess a question which I don't know, I hadn't really thought about it until now. Obviously, is like how did you guys get on board with the film? What in your experience of getting involved in films do you get in touch? Is there a call out thing, or do you get called upon by producers, directors?
Yeah, well, I tend to come on first, and then I would pick my team. So it would have been me that arranged for Liz to come on the film. We'd known each other for a very long time, so it felt right that we worked together on this. It was our first time working together. But I get the job really by being approached by the production company. It was with Working Title, who I've done a lot of films with, and so they suggested me to Richard for it. And we had quite a few people in common. So I met him for the film quite a long time before it happened. It ran aground for a while, and with them. I'm not sure whether it was to do with actor availability or what the reasons were. I can't quite remember, but I probably was offered the job by Richard about 6 months before we shot it, and I kind of I sort of treaded water to stay on it because I really loved the script, and Richard is a complete joy to be around.
Totally.
So he's somebody you really, once you've met, you really do want to work with. So I kind of waited and did a few commercials for a while for the job to happen, and then Liz and my team, my art director David Hindle was an art director I'd worked with a lot. So my art direction side of things was more my regular team, but Liz and her team were kind of it was our first time working together.
Yeah. I remember the phone call. He rang me up and I was in the East End.
Oh, did I?
I remember JP ringing me up and asking me. I was delighted. So it was great fun.
Yeah, it was a good fun film to do. We had a great summer. It was the summer that the Olympics happened in London, and Richard had written had been quite involved in the Danny Boyle opening Olympics opening ceremony. Yeah. And but then unfortunately, because we were right in the middle of filming, he couldn't go to it. So he had rented the family's other house, which was right next door to the house in Porthpeen, and we had a huge Olympic party for the opening party. And it was really the most one of the most memorable things I can remember on a film. Us all sitting around, the actors all of us on the floor with a big screen, and it was a little bit like the family sitting outside watching their movies, and we all watched the opening ceremony together and celebrated this massive event happening in London that we were all missing. But I think it was probably more memorable than if I certainly had been in London watching it. You know, it was a very special moment.
But I guess I should say to the listeners, in case we end up referencing future stuff, that this is recorded after we've done every episode.
Yeah.
So, because otherwise, I feel like if we answer questions here that they then hear us ask in like 2 months' time, it's going to get confusing.
And you analyze every 2 minutes of the film the whole way through. So there's like that's a lot of analyzing
on Thursday. And somehow we spent an hour on the end credits. I don't know how that happened. Oh yeah, that's because I started reading out most of it.
Yeah, you started reading random things from the end credits.
And that's how this sort of came about-ish. I started reading different parts of the end credits and then just searching on IMDb Pro for people on there. So Liz, I'm pretty sure in the final episode there is a moment where I first call you, which you then call me back the next day. But I think that might be
great.
In the last episode.
Oh yeah, you left the voicemail while recording.
I mean, I'll probably cut that out, or at least bleep part of it, because I'm pretty sure I said my entire mobile number on there, so that's not staying in. But yeah, it's just the more in depth we look at About Time, the more beautifully made we can see it is. It's just, I think one of the reviews said it best, which is that it's the film equivalent of a warm hug.
Yeah, that's very nice. Yeah, it's very very moving. I mean, I don't know anyone who has seen the scene on the beach at the end who didn't have a tear in their eye. So it does seem to have a big effect on people as a film.
But it's a great, story of our time in terms of, grabbing those precious moments, that what is the essence of life? It's all the things, when he goes to the pret-a-manger counter and says hello and actually communicates with the person serving the sandwich, to, walking down the street and realising who the people are around him. And Richard's brilliant at that, and it really resonates, and I think it's one of those timeless films. And I was saying to JP earlier, we were talking, and it's one of the films that anybody that knows me always asks me about, or any students come to talk to me, they'll ask me about time. It's incredibly popular. It's touched a lot of people.
It really does. I was saying to Liz earlier when she rang me, I teach in University in London, and during this I did a very big lecture with a Q&A afterward, about 200 students, and I would say at least 2/3 of the questions. I've worked on a lot of films and designed a lot of films, probably better known than About Time even is. And every second question was about time. It's got a huge following. So, Luke, I don't know how old you are, but, these kids are all kind of, 20 or early 20s. And it's just surprising really, because they, it wouldn't have been around at the time that, they were kind of growing up. So it's interesting that it has a longevity and still reaches to people. But I think it boils down to its message really. It's the simplest of messages of just to take the time to appreciate what's around you, and that kind of is a timeless sort of message. And it's the kind of whole point of, I think, that Richard Curtis tries to make in his films really, is appreciating the world that you've got. So it felt like, he said he didn't want to direct another film after it, but it was the point he's been trying to make really, with all his work. So it felt very special to be involved in that.
Absolutely.
Okay, Robert's just sent me a message saying what the actual thing he was talking about on the wall.
This is the driftwood hanging, yeah.
Yeah, the driftwood.
It's a driftwood hanging.
Oh, yeah.
I think we got that in Cornwall, actually. I think
it's in my garden.
That's
It's probably not meant to be in my garden, but it is.
That doesn't make me feel too bad now, because I've got the Mary hanging between the bedroom and the living room.
Have you? That's beautiful.
I've got that.
I'm coming to get that.
I don't know where I put it.
I'll meet you for a picnic. We can sit in it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Not that we do this very often, obviously. It was just a special film, and there was a few things that just made their way home.
Yeah, I think there's usually a kind of a sale of things at the end for a kind of a nominal amount. So we get first dibs of that. So we end up with quite nice things in our houses, don't we, Liz?
We've got an eclectic, it's a bit...
all I seem to be getting from the more and more we do this show is, as a filmmaker, I need to work on a Richard Curtis film. Like, it just seems so fun.
In fact, I do need to mention, although I don't have a question for reasons. JP, you worked on Tristram Shandy.
I did, yes.
One of my shows is Cock and Bull Minute, although the joke of the show is I never talk about it.
Oh, really? Oh, that's funny.
But then I saw that on your list. I'm like,
yeah. Have you seen that film? That was a crazy film.
I saw it when it came out, and then even when I started a show about it, I haven't rewatched the film.
Yeah.
Every episode ends up being about something else.
It's been a long time. Well, that's very, very Tristram Shandy of you to do that. That's very, very in the spirit of the book.
Yeah, Robert, I think so. What you really need to do is try and persuade JP to come on and talk about everything else he's worked on, except
talk about some other movie.
Yeah, it's just fascinating. I kind of feel so sorry for all of these smaller roles on a film set. Although it's obviously not a small role, but these things where you don't get the appreciation that everyone else does.
I think we need to be more down with the kids and start doing podcasts. I feel like I need to be, start it. Well, maybe JP, we should be doing our own, set deck art department podcast channel, because maybe that's how you reach people. We don't know really how to meet. We're not really kind of looking for people to come and find us. We're not that sort of people, but it's interesting now that we're chatting. It'd be great.
I'm happier behind the scene.
And I've always wanted to do on how do you make a film from like the beginning of the person finding the book or finding the script, and then getting the director on board, and then getting the producer, and then getting the money, and I quite fancy doing a podcast about that and like interviewing like 5-minute slips
Like
of
an
people.
oral history of the entire
Because
production.
we do pre-production and we do production, but we don't do post-production. So there's a whole and how it gets to the cinema, and so maybe there's something in that.
And like release it as you go along. So like. So people know the script, people know the story, and they all get to follow the entire film being.
Let's
I don't know how you go about doing
lasts
that.
For. It's easing up now, so I better get on the phone.
Yeah, well, the only annoying thing about doing this podcast is I've been meaning to write my scripts and I haven't. But this is hopefully. Hopefully, how many episodes would we have done, Robert? A lot.
Let's see, 2 minutes at a time, 60 something.
But then we have the bonus one, so it pushes.
Right.
Yeah, on each Friday, because it's being a time travel film, we have one normal minute, and then we go back to a random minute and talk about that again. And
very good.
This could go on forever, you realise?
Yeah.
Yeah, you could just keep going back and redoing episodes you didn't like because you've got the opportunity to.
Okay, so we have 24 weeks of 3 episodes, so yeah, 70 odd.
It was something we'd spent a lot of time on in the film, was trying to work out how to do the flashbacks, how to go back in time. It was Richard really didn't want that to feel too magical. It needed to feel kind of matter of fact, so we did loads of tests to work out what the images should be as you shot back in time. So sometimes you flash through stuff you'd seen, but also we shot these extra moments to be able to kind of go back through those as well.
Brilliant.
I remember bringing that wardrobe with us everywhere. That was one of those little set pieces that travelled. It was kind of like, we were in the Abbey Road studio. Have you got the wardrobe? Yeah, we've got the wardrobe. And it was kind of like, let's put the wardrobe. The props guys are putting that wardrobe together. Many different places, I seem to remember.
It was a pickup, Liz, that never happened. It got dragged to the end. It kept getting delayed as we kept going.
That's what it was.
It was a pickup of him standing inside, because to be inside we built an interior of the wardrobe and we built an interior of the cupboard under the stairs on stage, so we had to shoot those out. But then actually shooting back on him in the cupboard, for some reason that never got shot, and it carried for like 9 weeks, this wardrobe going around with us.
With the dressing, don't forget it was one of those funny things. And we picked it up in Shepton Mallet Antiques Market. We found that, I think. And it was a one-off. And, had we have known it needed to be reinforced, a certain size, we might have tried to find one that there was 3 of, but there was only this one wardrobe that was very precious anyway. We tried to look after it best we could.
Yeah, I mean, when you mentioned Abbey Road, that must have been painful to cut after what we hear is a heck of a lot of work for that one.
Yes, that kind of got cut out. Yeah, it was funny that it just it felt right that it wasn't in the film, though. I think that moment of them rushing to the hospital, cutting the way it did, I think.
Yeah, I like the cut to the baby's foot straight after the wedding.
And we, it's something Liz and I both used to, really, of having stuff that we've shot that doesn't end up in the film, and it's kind of you just got to embrace it as part of the process. Really, it's a little bit like people often say to me about the sets that I build, and did it not feel sad to see it dismantled at the end? I mean, no, it felt great. Because it had served its purpose. We'd got where we wanted to get with it, and it was never going to be something that was going to last forever. So, the fact that something disappears as soon as the film is rolled is kind of great. And it's a little bit the same with stuff that gets cut out of films. You go, you know what? We'll always have Paris. It might not be, might not be in the film, but
no one else saw it.
Remember it. Yeah.
But I mean, that's the life of jobbing art department. We create whole 360-degree worlds. We built that hospital, for example. When she's had the baby, that was a wreck of a place. It was all decorated. We put lovely mural stencils up on the wall. It got all the beds. Everything about it was not there. And you see probably half a wall and the bed, and you don't see the full, all the blinds were made to measure, the colours. Every little detail takes an awful lot of time. And the other part of the same ward was the intensive care. I think they split that in the same location. But it's the joy and the pain of it all,
And Robert, you loved the sign about the sister wards, didn't you, at this?
Yeah,
It was a nice, whether that was intentional or not, it was a nice little,
Yeah,
little nod.
It wasn't a hospital, so it kind of must have been. I can't quite remember. I remember being really worried about the hospital, how a hospital was ever going to fit into this film of loveliness. So it was how you suddenly don't. Robert, you're not English, but that it didn't become kind of British TV of Holby City or Casualty or something, and sort of feel like a daytime soap. So I was really pleased with what we ended up with it, that it kind of stayed in the mood of the piece. Even when Kit Kat had her accident, we found these great kind of incredible blue curtains, which are kind of standard NHS curtains that get used in hospitals, but they completely fitted the colour palette of the film. So even though you were in a moment of crisis with Kit Kat, it felt like the world hadn't suddenly kind of dissolved into soap opera, and it stayed in the right atmosphere. The maternity ward was slightly easier, I think, wasn't it, with them?
Yeah, we could put flowers in there and make it softer and make it more kind of special in a way.
No,
warmer,
I think we avoid flowers again and did balloons. We
did lots of balloons. Yeah, balloons. Obviously, at the New Year's Eve party was.
Wasn't there something about Donal and pink balloons? Was there some sort of
why that he liked pink balloons?
There was something about that. Yeah, that he requested pink balloons. I could
be
wrong.
About that.
That was.
I don't remember
that we did that. We had the things I remember Donal requesting were the pink balloons and the Amelie poster was what I.
The Amelie poster was definitely.
I remember him requesting that. Yeah.
Yeah. But that was I mean, it was interesting. I was thinking about those balloons. That house. Don't forget, there was things that we shot it for Christmas, and I remember them filming on the hottest day of the year. There was lots of. If you look back at the film now, there was lots of neutral density. Sort of film on the windows, and there's lots of clever tricks to get around that it was really hot or it was really cold, but it was always the opposite to what it needed to be. I'm sure when the girls were outside it was freezing, and it was just really weird the way it worked with that house.
It was a super warm summer. I remember we did lovely. Yeah. It was kind of idyllic in Cornwall. We all fell in love with Cornwall as a result. So.
Yeah, I bought a property there because I loved it so much. So that's as much as I love Cornwall. Yeah.
When we shot the stuff at the end, which was, in Clapham Common and stuff, that was just moments of people in parks and things. That was getting quite late into autumn, I seem to remember. And we got these beautiful, beautiful days. So it was one of those films, really. It was full of look and lots of loveliness.
So before we go on to our final segment, what are your favourite memories from working on About Time?
I think the people. I mean, I met some lovely people, and there was a lovely girl called Antonia Ather that I had who lived down the road in St Agnes, and she kind of created sculptures, and she ended up making all the arches that were full of ribbons that we used for the church scene, and all the hanging down ribbons, and it was just lovely to meet Cornish artists and people, and for me to be down there and searching antique shops and crafting people, buying things locally down there, and meeting Mrs. Petherick. She had two dogs, one lovely yellow Labrador and then a tiny little wee little terrier. And she was an absolute delight, and halcyon memories, as I said at the beginning, of sitting in the kitchen having toast and jam with the props boys at 8 o'clock in the morning before we started dressing the set. And I've been down the house several times since, and I've kept in contact with her, not so recently, but about 4 or 5 years ago. So yeah, and Cornwall, fell in love with Cornwall, really beautiful.
It was very, very lovely. Yeah, I mean, obviously, the team and working with Richard and the team that we had now were very memorable. If I had to pick a moment of memory, it was the tennis court, where we built the walls around the tennis court to make it look like an old ruin. We had to kind of try and justify why this thing was here on a cliff top, and it was just this lovely day with my dog, who was the last film he came on with me, called Bruno, and he was just rolling on his back on that tennis court that we were desperately trying to keep in perfect nick because it wasn't a real tennis court, so the actors could play in it.
Made that.
And I just remember it being a really lovely lasting image of the last days of my dog having a lovely scratch of his back on our set. So yeah, that would be a memory I remember.
Okay, so we tend to ask each guest what would normally be on a Friday episode, but being a bonus, we ask you both now. If you had to go back in time to any moment in your life to relive something, either change it or just experience it once more, taking aside the whole message of this film that time travel's unnecessary, of course, what moment of your life would you choose?
Liz, you go.
Oh my gosh, that's tricky, isn't it? Wish I'd have prepped this. I should have thought about it. I mean, it's as this film is, it's about love, isn't it? That's the whole film, and imagining how to make your life special. And for me, it was the love of my parents, I guess, that aren't here anymore. And if I could spend any more time with Jean and Stan, I would be a very happy girl.
Yeah, but I'm very much the same, actually. My dad died when I was 7, and so your memories are very, very sketchy. So the idea of going back to have a moment with my dad would be wonderful. Now there's been lots of kind of great parties and beaches and things since that would also be lovely to revisit. But I think that special moment with your loved one would be the one. So I'd love to go back to before my dad died.
And have any of you got obviously there's not many projects that are coming out around this period, but have you got any of your projects that you're particularly proud of that you recommend that people check out and see?
How long have you got? I've just finished a film with John Madden called Operation Mincemeat, which was a really fantastic experience, and that's about to come out later in the year. And the one I did before that was Blind Spirit, the Noel Coward play, which it was really great fun. That felt very like like About Time in lots of ways. That it was all set in one incredible house. In this case, it was a kind of an Art Deco mansion up in the hills in Surrey, and we had another sort of a blissful summer of filming in a big house. So I had a kind of parallels. But yeah, they're the last 2 films I've worked on that are yet to come into the cinema.
And I'm in the middle of about to start the second series of Armando Iannucci's Avenue 5, which is a HBO show. You can see it on Sky Atlantic if you've got that. And yeah, we did the first series up at Leavesden, built a massive spaceship, which was an incredible set. Mm-hmm. And then, one of the biggest sets after the Harry Potter sets in the studio that unfortunately burnt down. So it was a bit of a summer last summer. So we're rebuilding that and building new sets and about to go into season 2. But yeah, so that's kind of something. And then talking about time, I always love my little film Pride, which I mentioned earlier, which is a really uplifting about gay rights and how important that is, and again about moments in time and people. I think that's a fabulous film.
And Bill Nye as well.
And Bill, I only work with Bill. Bill's in every film I've ever done, I think.
He's in every film I've ever done as well, though. I've worked with him about 5 times.
I was reading this thing a while ago that says that most British people end up meeting Bill Nye several times in their life.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm hoping to meet Bill
Nye remembers everyone and every detail. So he remembered the name of my dog. He remembered, and I hadn't seen him sort of for 8 years, since the last time. But he has the most extraordinary memory. So yeah, it's if you've worked with Bill Nye, he remembers your name, and that's not just the heads of department. That's everyone on the team, and it's a really beautiful characteristic.
He's an amazing gentleman. Amazing.
So, I mean, are either of you got any social media or anything that people can find you on? Or?
No, I tend not to. I like to stay quietly in the background doing my thing. But
I know it's so different nowadays, isn't it? I think we're born in a different generation. Everyone wants to know about everything, about everybody. No, I've got my website. There's Griffiths.com, but that's just a worky website. But I don't really do Twitter and Instagram and everything. I feel like I'm missing out. I'm suddenly feeling very old listening to this. I need to be doing it. I need to be, getting my own podcast channel or something. But yeah, no. So no.
So, Robert, where can the listeners find you, I guess?
Robert E.G. Black on social media or lemmingdrops.com.
Listeners can find me on Twitter at llama_bottle0, Instagram at the Ginger Luke, Facebook at Luke Allen Film, all podcast, radio appearances, newspaper.
Oh, we've lost him.
Lost him at the crucial moment.
He was just doing his on a run as well, wasn't he?
Yeah. Wait, how much did he get?
I don't know.
On Twitter, he's at llama_bottle0. At Instagram, he's the Ginger Luke. Facebook, I've heard him say this about 70 times now. His website, which has links to all of his stuff, news articles, everything else, is lukeallen.co.uk, and you can find the show on social media at 2 Mins About Time.
Great. Well, I look forward to seeing the show, or hearing the show.
Hearing the show, yeah.
Yes, so do I.
At the time of this recording, let's see, tomorrow, at minutes 38 and 39 go out. So we're
Can
you
way
remember
ahead
what
on
they
recording.
are? What's 38, 39?
38 and 39 is when they're at the diner in the Kate Moss exhibit.
Oh, yeah.
And he meets Rupert, like Mary's boyfriends, and then
Yeah.
decides.
We didn't talk about there. We
I was
created
surprised by that, 'cause
gallery
there was a
from
real
scratch,
exhibit
so
the
that
year-
was my
like
big
the
empty
year before.
warehouse.
Like,
Yeah, so that was quite a big job. Yeah, we had quite a lot of negotiations with to arrange it, but yeah, we got the entire collection, rebuilt the gallery, so that was fun.
It was a big job.
Oh yeah,
It was a big job because these things were worth a fortune. So it was, under normal circumstances, real artworks or a laborious process in filmmaking to lug around. But that number of artworks and the value that they
and
have,
that's another one where you created the whole thing, and we just see little couple angles.
I don't know, because they walk around it, you see quite a lot.
See a lot on one side.
I think that set was pretty well used. I think.
So I'm sorry. A point which I'll cut me saying the social media to later on in the episode.
Oh, I did it for
now, because this is a point that we haven't said. Is that I don't know if Robert said this while I was off. Is the whole thing that I guess it was a deliberate decision to have the naked picture in the background, which made one of the reasons you lost your PG-13, right, in the States.
I don't know about how that happened, but choosing that picture was very deliberate. I mean, the picture with the cat was that happened really quite late because Richard spotted the cat in it, and it wasn't actually in the script. So spotted and when. That's the weirdest thing, is anyone noticed there's a cat at the bottom of that photograph, and so we moved the photographs around to include that line of dialogue.
Because I remember we have had mostly because I'm obsessed with age ratings for some reason. We definitely had a big conversation about the placement of the nude picture, and as to for a film which is tame for the most, doesn't have any other nudity. It was just an interesting decision.
But it's a memorable moment, right? Though, isn't it? It's when he sees her again. Mm-hmm. So it's that kind of snap second. You're going to remember it. It's his whole senses are kind of excited, and he's seeing her. So maybe that was why it was in the background of that. I don't know, but it worked.
I'm going to repeat my social media plug just to. In fact, let's just go straight from the start again of social media plugs, just so I don't have hassle in editing. And
you'll have the hassle because I said your stuff also.
Okay. The listeners can find me on Twitter at llama_bottle0, Instagram the Ginger Luke, Facebook Luke Allen Film, all podcast radio appearances, new practical short films are all Luke Allen PDK. This show's on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at 2 Mins About Time. They can find us on IMDb at 2 Minutes About Time, and you can join our Facebook group, The Cupboard, to discuss all things to do with About Time. And anything else. Thanks so much for listening to this episode. We tend to end each episode with a completely odd or random way of saying goodbye. So do either of you have any preferred ways of saying goodbye?
Well, I'm glad you warned us about that. Yeah. And that's a big kiss from me too.
It's always a better
we can see her. She's actually on the screen kissing us.
I'm on my way to my gin and tonic. I my lips are perched.
That's it.
You've beaten me, Jim.
Lovely to meet you both, and thank you for having us.
Yeah, lovely to see you guys, and I'll see you at some point in the future or in the past.
The 2 Minutes About Time theme is performed by Ethan O'Mahony and is a cover of the About Time theme originally composed by Nick Laird-Close. 2 Minutes About Time is a production of Lemming Drop Studios in association with Bottle O Productions.